Hey there, this is Joe Robinson, and in this video we're going to talk about some fingerstyle mistakes that people commonly make when playing fingerstyle guitar. One of the tricky things about playing an instrument is the longer you've played a certain way, the more difficult it is to change habits. And I recently read this book called Learn Faster, Perform Better by Molly O'Brien. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, Molly, but it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it to everybody. And one of the things that it reinforced to me was that you can't really change your habits. You have to create new ones. So in this video, I'm hopefully going to shed some light on some habits that, you should be aware of at least, and you can decide whether you want to take my recommendations and develop some new habits so that you have better technique overall. So let's jump into it. My name is Joe Robinson. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, press the like button, and do check out my free workshop, the Guitar Mastery Blueprint, which will help you establish some good practice habits. The first habit I want to bring to your attention is the hooked thumb. So with the right hand, you can play with a thumb pick, you can play without a thumb pick, but the issue I feel a lot of people get into is playing with the thumb hooked like this. So they'll kind of play and they'll start like hooking the thumb like this. And I feel that this really destabilizes the thumb. If you watch great guitar players like John Williams, Segovia, Tommy Emmanuel, Chet Atkins, Paco de Lucia, Jerry Reed, Richard Smith, Brent Mason, they all play with a very straight thumb. And the straight thumb, I think, gives a lot of stability to the thumb. And if your thumb is hooking all the time, I feel it's a bad habit on the guitar. My opinion, you can make the choice for yourself. There are some good players on YouTube, kind of more modern fingerstyle players that do this a little bit. So it's really a choice as to whether you want to adopt this. But in my view, the greatest players of all time don't hook their thumb. The next bad habit also has to do with the right hand thumb, and it's playing with too much plane of motion. So moving the thumb really dramatically, rather than playing with what I would consider to be economy of motion like this. You see people doing like this. But you want to avoid moving the thumb like crazy. Of course, if you have a teacher, someone that can look at your playing and give you specific direction, that is invaluable. But this is all food for thought. Okay, the third habit is applying classical rules to non-classical guitar playing. This is something that I've never heard anyone talk about, but in my view, it's really a huge deal. So in the classical teaching tradition, there are certain rules that people remember. So when you're playing classical guitar, your guitar is on the left leg. I'm not an expert on classical technique, but bear with me here. And it is commonly taught that you keep the thumb on the back of the neck, and you don't ever use the left-hand thumb to fret notes. And I'm going to explain why that is correct for classical technique, but it's incorrect for non-classical technique. In fact, it's actually a bad technique if you apply this to non-classical technique. So if you look at my left hand, my left wrist, it's pretty straight when I keep the thumb on the back of the neck like this with a classical type position. Remember, the guitar is on my left leg. This is classical style. And if my thumb is on the back of the neck, my left hand or wrist is pretty straight. Whereas if I put my thumb over the neck of the guitar, my left hand becomes very overextended. My left hand wrist, that is. And that's not good. You want to avoid overextending the wrist either way. You want to have the wrist fairly straight and neutral when you're playing the guitar. So if you take that rule to non-classical playing, such as you have the guitar on your right leg, which is the way a lot of people play, myself included, if you try to put your thumb on the back of the neck, you end up overextending the wrist, so the wrist is bent like this. And do this exercise for me. Keep your wrist straight and pinch your fingers and feel how strong that connection is. Now overextend the wrist and feel how weak that connection is. Overextend it the other way and feel how weak it is. You want to keep the wrist relatively straight. So if I keep the thumb on the back of the neck in the non-classical position here, my wrist becomes very overextended and weak. Whereas if I use my left hand thumb, and I do have larger hands, but this guitar has a bit of a larger neck. If I use my left hand thumb to fret notes, you'll notice there that my wrist is quite straight when I do that. If I play like an F chord with the thumb, my wrist is quite straight. It's not overextended too much, but it's pretty straight. Whereas if I play an F bar chord, then my wrist is bent. So this idea that your left-hand thumb always needs to be on the back of the neck, classical style, is bad advice if you don't play classical guitar. If the neck is pointed up like this when you play, it's good advice. And if the neck is more parallel to the ground, then it's not ideal. You want to play with the wrist being in the most neutral position. And if you take that classical left hand position and apply it to the electric guitar, it basically makes it very difficult to bend notes. You can see how awkward that looks. Or play with like a blues vibrato. For blues vibrato, you want to pivot on the finger like that and rock back and forth. And as you can see, my thumb is not on the back of the neck. It's moving. And as I'm doing that, the left hand is in a pretty neutral, straight position. So I thought I'd just cut in here and speak a little about something I've been kind of trying to figure out with my own technique. So for the first, I don't know how many years, 20 plus years of my guitar playing, believe it or not, I mostly played standing up. I used to practice standing up. I used to pace around my property. You know, our property when I was a kid in the Australian bush. And when I was in Nashville, you know, I lived there for 12 years. And I was always living in a house where I could just pace around and play songs over and over again. But in the last 3 years, I've moved out here to Montana. And now I'm married and I have a 2-year-old son. And pacing around the house, playing the same song over and over again will drive them absolutely nuts. And outside right now, it's January here in Montana. And some days it gets to minus 20 degrees. It doesn't matter if that's Celsius or Fahrenheit. It's very cold. So it's not really possible to walk around outside, let alone with an instrument like this, which has become my kind of main guitar. It's a 1937 D18 Martin. This is a guitar that I don't want to drill strap holes into. So I've had to kind of figure out a way to play sitting with good technique, which for me is a bit of a challenge because I started kind of sitting more when I started making more videos when the pandemic hit and all my tour dates were cancelled. And I found that, you know, I could play a concert for 3 hours. I could practice for hours and hours. All day I could practice. And I would have no fatigue, no issues, because I was mostly standing up. But as soon as I started sitting down to film myself playing, I felt, you know, I'd get a sore back, or I just felt like my neck was a bit sore, or I'd have rotator cuff kind of problems a little bit. So anyway, I've been trying to figure this out lately, and one thing that I've been experimenting with is playing with my right leg crossed over like this, kind of like the flamenco players do. And I like this for a number of reasons. I experimented with trying to find a footrest for my right leg just to get the guitar up a little so I wasn't hunched over all the time. But I like putting the right leg on the up like this, crossed over, because it really elevates the guitar nicely. I feel like my back can be straighter and I can lean back. And most importantly, perhaps, I can feel like I'm Paco de Lucia. I played a concert with Paco years and years ago, and it was one of the highlights of my musical journey. It was absolutely amazing to hear him and his ensemble it was so inspiring to me. And yeah, the position here feels really good, feels really comfortable. I like that the neck can be totally perpendicular to the ground, which is the way I like it. And I really like the way yeah, it feels in general. So if you see me doing this more often, you'll notice it in videos. You'll know that this kind of position has worked for me. But of course, everyone's sort of find their own kind of way of sitting, standing, you know, whatever feels ergonomically good to you. But I just wanted to share that about something that I've been kind of battling. It's not exactly a bad habit, but it's just a technique, quandary. And I guess sitting like this, bent over to film videos all day is not a great habit. So yeah, that's just a little bit I wanted to share on that. The next habit I see people make is learning the wrong types of tunes. Now, if you go to like those free tab sites like Ultimate Guitar, then I'm sure you've had this experience if you've searched for free tab on the internet, but a lot of that tab is very low quality, a lot of it's wrong, and in my view, it's because it's poorly arranged. It hasn't been arranged by a good teacher, someone who's designing something to be played by other people. There are tons of really good teachers online. On YouTube, there's free lessons for sure. I have a paid course series, invisibletechnique.com/complete fingerstyle guitar. If you go to my website, you can see, you know, the way I arrange songs so that they're really step-by-step, easy to learn. I'm not just trying to sell my courses here. I'm just saying that if you learn songs that are arranged by a teacher, you'll have an easier time learning them rather than being arranged by some, you know, random person who is uploaded to free tab sites. And you have to use your own judgment when you're finding a teacher as to, you know, how well they play, whether you like them, whether you have a good kind of gut feeling that they know their stuff. And unfortunately, you know, you can't really assume that just because someone has a degree in music that they know what they're talking about. If you're finding this to be helpful information, check out my free workshop, the Guitar Mastery Blueprint. This is a really great workshop that I put a lot of effort into. It's going to show you exactly how to build really great technique, what to do, all the key elements, the blueprint for mastering the guitar and playing with effortless, beautiful tone. The Guitar Mastery Blueprint. Click the link in the description. Be sure to check it out. Another bad habit that us guitarists all do to a degree is staring down at our hands when we play. And one way that I've found to practice not doing that is to practice in front of a mirror. This is my mirror. It's positioned on the ground here. And when I practice, I look down at the mirror rather than down at my hands. And I probably could experiment to find a better position for this mirror, but in my studio here I don't have a lot of space, so I'm trying to figure that out. But if you can play in front of a mirror and get used to looking forward at yourself playing rather than looking down at your hands all the time, I think that's a really good thing to do. Because if we're just staring at our hands all the time, it's not good for our neck, it's not good for our playing, and if we're going to jam with someone or perform, then it's really nice to not be just so used to looking at your neck that if you look up at the audience, it feels like totally foreign. Yeah, so I find that playing in front of a mirror really helps with this. The last bad habit is one that you've possibly heard about before, and that's because it's very common and it's one of the central challenges of playing the guitar. It's the habit of being too stiff in the hands. Now, we have to train our hands to play with relaxed technique, and we have to be pretty intentional about this because it's not really a natural thing to sit down and play with completely isolated, you know, muscles, engaging only the muscles needed to play the notes and having everything else be relaxed. It's tricky and it takes a while to develop, but some people, well, a lot of people develop, you know, the habit of just holding the neck too tight with the left hand or keeping the right hand all tensed up. You can do legato exercises like this to help train the left hand to be relaxed. Start on the index and middle finger, then go to the middle and ring finger, then go to the ring finger and pinky. And try to engage only the muscles that are needed for playing. Do that for 30 seconds on each pair of fingers, and then work that up to 45 seconds or a minute. I do it for a minute each. It's one of my favorite workouts on the guitar to just get the left hand to play with absolute precision, absolute control, but in a really relaxed and fluid way. If you can train your hand to be relaxed, you'll have better tone, because you won't be just like choking the notes. You'll have better vibrato, better ability to bend. Everything improves. And one of the tricky things about playing the guitar is the longer you do something, the harder it is to change a habit. So you need to kind of create those new habits. And one of the most important ones to develop, I think, is training the hands to be relaxed when you play. Please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video and found it to be helpful. Check out my video, Talent is BS, if you want my somewhat contrarian take on what it takes to develop guitar skills.